A Viking Vent Line, Judd Zolgad, Danny Cunningham, Manny Hill producing, Declan Goff running the streams on which you can find this show. We're in the TCL broadcast studios. And you just heard some highlights and quotes from disgruntled Danny Cunningham, Jacksonville Jaguars cornerback Jalen Ramsey. Matthew Collar just posted a column about this. It's SKORNorth.com, and I am here to back him up completely. The Vikings need to, right now, be actively involved in trying to acquire Jalen Ramsey. And I'm going to give you my quick thoughts why, and then you tell me if you think I'm crazy or not. And I know the question is out there already on your Twitter poll, so we can incorporate those responses. And of course, 651-646-8255 if you'd like to call and chime in on the Vikings' potential to make a trade for a standout cornerback. All right, here's my quick case.
Let's hear it.
You are built around defense.
Mhm.
The Vikings' identity under Mike Zimmer since he got here has been defense. Xavier Rhodes, who 2 years ago was a phenomenal corner, Zimmer trained and he was phenomenal, might be cooked. He's 29, but we know for a fact that that concern goes outside this studio, that there are people who think he might be cooked. And this goes back to seeing him fall down in the third preseason game against the Cardinals. This goes back to a little bit of what we saw on Sunday. He might be cooked, and he was 2 years back a shutdown guy. Point three, you know that you cannot count on your quarterback. Kirk Cousins might be able to, at his very best, help you, but you cannot just say, well, it didn't work out on Sunday, but I sure hope it works out in Chicago. You know, I think it might work out. If you say that, you're foolish. All of these things, to me, say, all right, you've got a chance right now, Daniel. You've got a chance right this second. And you are, I don't care what you think, you are all in for 2019. This has nothing to do with, if you were saying, well, yeah, but it would really be nice to be good in 2022, then I'd say, okay, back off. But I would be prepared to, and Collar makes this case as well, I would be prepared to call up Jacksonville, and this would take a little bit of cap work, but it could be done, offer them Rhodes and my 2020 first-round pick for a guy who, just quickly as well, because contracts are important here. Jalen Ramsey was taken 5th overall in the 2016 draft. He is in the 4th year of his rookie contract, which this year is $3.6 million. It goes up to $13.7 million on the 5th year option, which very likely in 2020 would be worth it. Rhodes is making $10.4 million in the 3rd year. His cap hit is $13.3 in the 3rd year of a 6-year deal. All of these things put together, Xavier Rhodes and my first-round pick in 2020, and evidently Jacksonville wants 2 first-round picks, but Minkah Fitzpatrick only got back 1. I'd offer them that package. My first-rounder, Xavier Rhodes. I get back a shutdown corner who I could pair with Trey Waynes, and I can say, undoubtedly today, my defense, which is my hallmark, my calling card, has been improved.
There's no question he's someone that would improve the defense. He's the best corner in the NFL right now. I think that he projects to be the best corner in the NFL 2 years from now as well. He's someone that you would have to pay at some point, so it would take some salary cap manipulation in the future. Maybe not right now, but in the future it would. My concern, I don't know. I don't think Jacksonville accepts that offer. I think they're going to want more than just Xavier Rhodes and that first-round pick. I think it's going to take another draft pick. Maybe it's going to take a third along with the one in Xavier Rhodes.
Okay.
Maybe Jacksonville wants no part of Xavier Rhodes. If you and I think that he's cooked, which both of us do, and other people out there do as well, I'm sure that there are people in Jacksonville's front office that share that trepidation about him, that there is concern that Xavier Rhodes won't ever be the same guy.
Okay.
That's something that you have to think about. So what is his value? What type of the report out there is that Jacksonville wants 2 first-round picks for Jalen Ramsey, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're giving them 1.
Mhm.
Xavier Rhodes doesn't equate to a first-round pick right now.
Mhm.
He's not that good. What do you have to add in to make that equation work? Because I think it probably takes another 3rd-round pick or a 4th-round pick at the very worst.
You know what? If that's the case, absolutely do that.
I would too.
Absolutely. I don't see you are, if you're the Vikings, you are all in, but you know who you can count on and who you can't. And you know that you cannot count on your quarterback. You just can't.
Mhm.
I'm not saying Kirk Cousins is not the worst quarterback in the world or in the league by any means. But the thought process of, well, perhaps, my defense can get away with a few things and Rhodes is declining, but I've got this quarterback and this offense. We saw that Sunday. Dalvin Cook's masterful and it didn't matter.
Yeah.
So if Jacksonville says, all right, Rick Spielman, we'll take Rhodes back, make that work contractually. We want your first round in 2020, and we need your third round pick in 2020 or 21. I'm all in then.
I think
Because
you should be.
what's the, if you don't do something like this, what's the end game here for 2019? And I'll go back to saying 2019, if it doesn't work, could end up with Rick being fired, Mike being fired, the coaching staff being cleared out.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can now get the best cornerback, if we consider him to be, in the National Football League right now, gentlemen, and I have Trey Waynes, who I know people are tough on Trey Waynes, but Trey Waynes is absolutely fine.
Yeah.
Trey Waynes is
Solid
fine.
corner. He's no Jalen Ramsey, but he's fine.
And your defense is damn good.
Mm-hmm.
In the offseason, I said this: cut loose a defensive player to sign a guard. And they didn't listen, and they didn't do that. And instead, they signed Josh Klein, who's a declining guard. They drafted Bradbury, who's getting pushed around. They moved Elfline, which was tantamount to moving a deck chair on the Titanic. They didn't listen. So now what I'm saying is, all right, you chose your path, but your path right now ain't going to work.
No.
So now I'm saying double down. Go all in. Put Jalen Ramsey in your secondary, and it's going to hurt you a little bit. It's going to cost you, and it's going to cost you draft picks. But, all right, Rick, if I tell you right now, if you don't do this, if you don't make a move like this, you are not going to have a job come April. You're not going to be drafting for anybody.
Yeah.
I don't see any downside right now, since this is your path, to saying our quarterback's not that great. Xavier Rhodes is definitely not that great. I think there's just flat out something wrong there. And this does not mean he's going to drop to being a terrible cornerback,
no.
But he's not the type of quarterback that he was 2 years ago. And Jalen Ramsey might be a better quarterback than that guy was.
Yeah. Oh, certainly is. I think Jalen Ramsey is the best corner in football.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's particularly close right now. I think that's exactly what he is. And how much better would he make this Vikings defense if that's the case? If he comes in here, if they make a trade, if he's back in that defensive backfield with Harrison Smith, and you add in a player like him to an already fantastic defense, how much better do they get? Do they become the best defense in the NFL? Are they better than Chicago's defense? What does this look like? That's the question that you have to ask. I think that it's worth the risk. It's worth trading a 1. It's worth trading a 3. It's worth trading Xavier Rhodes. It's worth doing whatever, because you are in the position now where you have a legitimate window. That window is not as large as it should be because of Kirk Cousins. We've harped on that all week. I don't want to turn over that stone again today. We've talked about that enough. If you want to hear that, go listen back to the last 2 days on the SKOR North app. You can find it. I promise it is there. But you still have a window. And the only way that you're going to make this window bigger, other than trading for a different quarterback, is by improving your defense. There are not very many ways that you can improve your defense, but trading for Jalen Ramsey is the best way out there.
He's 24 years old. He's going to be 25 next month. I mean, he hasn't even hit the prime of his career yet, and he's the best corner in football. This is a no-brainer for me. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, and
if you can pull it off,
yeah,
it's a no-brainer.
If you had addressed your offensive line sufficiently, it might not be. But now I think you just say, bleep it. Let's just go all in defense. Let's just try and stop the pass in a league that loves the pass.
Mm-hmm.
Let's try and eliminate the pass as much as possible. And Xavier Rhodes not going to do that.
Let me ask you this. What's the most you would give up for Jalen Ramsey? At what point would you walk away from discussion with Jacksonville because they want too much? What is too much? Well, because there has to be that point.
Sure. But given my predicament right now, given the fact that I am in a window where I still really need to win, where there's no, the Wilfs are not saying, it didn't work out. That's too bad. Yeah, this was fun. Yeah. Hang on to all our draft picks. I would give up a first in 2020. I would give up a third, and I would probably give up a third pick of compensation piece of some sort. Maybe if you get to 4 picks, I'd say no. It depends on the picks, though.
Sure.
And if I'm the Wilfs and Rick comes to me and says, well, it's they're asking for another 5th round pick because I think those are precious. You know what? The Vedvik trade established what you think of those picks.
Yep. The Vedvik trade, any idea that Rick Spielman's going to think a first and a third and a player for Jalen Ramsey is too much. Dude, you traded a 5th round pick for a punter that you cut 2 weeks later.
All right. So let's say this. Let's say that the Jaguars say, well, no, we'll take Rhodes back. but we want 2 first-round picks. We want a 2020 first-round pick, and let's say we want to, let's stagger them a little bit for the sake of the conversation.
Yeah.
2024 first-round pick.
Sure.
Do you do it?
I do it.
Yep.
I do it. I don't think twice about it. I think that he's a special player that doesn't necessarily come around often for you. How many opportunities are you going to have if you were the Vikings to draft a Jalen Ramsey? Because this first round pick you're sending back to Jacksonville, it's not going to be a top 5 pick where you got Jalen Ramsey originally, the Jaguars, that is. Who are you going to be able to sign in free agency of his caliber with the lack of cap space that you have? Nobody. How are you going to acquire someone like this? Because players of this caliber don't come available often.
And combine him with this coach.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the scheme and the rest of his defense.
Oh boy.
Who, by the way, and this is an important point to make, I think Jalen Ramsey would love this coach. And now, I was anti-Antonio Brown because I think he's a pain in the arse. And I think an offensive pain for Zimmer might be a problem. But let's just say Jalen Ramsey, high-maintenance dude. Let's just say he is, okay?
Sure.
But Mike has experience and knows how to handle those guys on defense. So I'm not afraid of that.
Cincinnati.
If this is a wide receiver, then I say, Zim's going to bristle at this guy, and he really not going to like him that much. But Mike's going to get Jalen Ramsey and say, "Oh my God, are you special?" And you're talking about a guy like a masterful painter, and he's working with another masterful painter. I think the relationship there would work out perfectly.
I do too.
I think it's a perfect fit. Perfect fit.
I see no downside. 651-646-8255. 651-646-8255. If the Vikings could trade Rhodes, a first and a third for Jalen Ramsey today. And by the way, so they play tomorrow night. They play Tennessee tomorrow night, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's happening today.
No, and he's not.
It's not happening tomorrow either.
And Ramsey said he wants to play. There's no way in God's green earth, if they're smart, he gets near the field, because then I saw a report that said the trade could happen as early as Friday.
Yeah, I believe Ian Rappaport.
But if I'm the Vikings on Friday, bang, I pull the trigger.
Yeah.
I pull the trigger.
I would try and get it done as soon as possible.
651-646-8255. Danny, you put out a Twitter question today on this. Why don't you give me the question and some of the responses we've gotten so far?
Yeah, real simple question at Real D Cunningham on Twitter. If you were the Vikings, what would you trade to Jacksonville for Jalen Ramsey? We've got over 50 responses so far. Let's see here. Drip Saunders says Thielen or Diggs for Ramsey and D.D. Westbrook. Tony says Waynes and a first or second, whatever it takes. There have been quite a few responses. Just send them Kirk Cousins. Doug says the 2020.
That can't happen. Kirk Cousins is a no trade clause.
Yeah, I know.
Among other things.
Doug says the 2020 number 1 pick and the 2021 number 2 pick. Dan says Rhodes in a first.
Go back. 2021 number 1 pick?
No, this upcoming draft, the number 1. And then in 2021, so 2 drafts from now, the number 2.
Okay.
And Jay Rose says any one of our corners plus a 1 to start. Someone sent me a gif of Kirk Cousins dancing. A couple more Cousins responses. Let's see here. There was a really good one that I liked that suggested you trade Cousins and a third for Foles and Ramsey, which is not happening. I'm sorry, Eric.
Again, folks, Kirk Cousins, no trade. Among the many things worked into that contract, no trade.
And Nick Foles is injured.
Yeah, true.
Pat says Stephon Diggs in a third rounder. Alex says 8 first round picks.
Herschel Walker trade.
Yeah.
I'm not, you know what? Okay, so the Diggs trade suggestion is probably not tongue in cheek, and I can't do that.
Yeah.
I can't trade Diggs. Now, do I think Diggs is going to be here long term and not back in Washington at some point fairly soon? I'm not so sure, but you can't trade. If you trade Diggs in season, you're left with Thielen and Beebe? Nah, I'm sorry.
Someone tweets in and just says Andrew Wiggins.
We'll see on that one.
I don't know if the Jaguars have the cap space to absorb that.
Yep.
Yeah, they don't.
He might be a good football player.
But
you never know.
A lot of responses coming in at Real D Cunningham, at Jay Zolga, at SKOR North on Twitter. If you want to give your thoughts, tweet them at us, and we will be sure to get to them. Tons of responses coming in. I think over 75 so far.
And this would give you a cornerback who could do the equivalent of what Rhodes did 2 years back, which I think they're still trying to have him do at times, but I don't think it works nearly as effectively now, which is shadow top guys as well.
Yeah.
And I don't, so on the Waynes one, now Waynes and Jalen Ramsey were drafted a year apart, okay?
Yeah.
So Waynes was taken 11th overall in 2015. Ramsey was taken 5th overall, Danny, in 2016. Waynes is on the 5th-year option of his rookie deal, $9.1 million. And at this rate, I don't know that he's going to come back, but I have no interest in offering him up, because then my question is, okay, I've got Ramsey and now I've got Rhodes. Does that offset it? I guess I might think about it, but I'd far prefer to give them draft pick compensation, and if they want Rhodes, and then attach Rhodes.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Because I think Waynes takes too much heat.
I would rather that. I think that that's the better deal for the Vikings. But if push comes to shove and that's what they want, I'm doing it.
Then what's the deal? If it's Trey Waynes, because
I
they're
would
not
do
getting
Trey
nearly
Waynes in a 1. I wouldn't add in another pick.
That's what
I
I was
would
gonna
do
say.
Trey Waynes in a 1.
I probably would draw the line for Trey Waynes. I'd probably say I'll do Waynes, and then obviously you're going to have to re-sign him to a fairly rich contract after this season, and a 1. But that's probably it. I'm probably not incorporating the 3 then.
No, but I'm not opposed to trading Trey Waynes if it gets me Jalen Ramsey.
No, I would just love to have Rhodes gone, and then Waynes, Ramsey, nickel package.
Sure. And one more response coming in. I think that's my favorite one so far. Joe tweets Kirk Cousins and Xavier Rhodes for Gardner Minshew and Jalen Ramsey.
As long as he wears pants when he stretches. Pre-game, at least. Phil, what's going on?
Hey there, guys.
What's
So
up, Phil?
I actually have a bit of a question that's been bugging me for a while now, which is, all right, so we say in this conversation that Zimmer and Spielman are pretty much out the door if things go belly up this year. But I don't know that I really understand this, because they pretty much executed a plan despite the fact that their quarterback almost lost his leg. And you end up having to chase Cousins on the sort of on the open market. And I don't really understand this, because, of course, that guy who you're hiring is never going to be good enough. They've shown they can execute a plan. They continue to build teams that if you had good quarterback play and if you were patient and you were willing to draft, they could probably do this again, right? So, like, why is it that their jobs are totally on the line after this year when everything else seems to really have actually been in place, aside from the offensive line? But even that, Arif Hassan made a really pretty good argument, I think, at the end of last season, that Spielman had put more capital into the offensive line than would normally be expected. That is to say, he'd been trying to fix the offensive line for almost 3 years and had really bad luck. So I guess that's my question. Like, why do we always get into the conversation of those guys losing their jobs? Because I think that is kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Thanks, Phil. Good
Yeah,
call.
Phil, thanks for the call. And to answer your question, the reason why their jobs are in jeopardy or at stake here is because, yeah, they've tried to fix the offensive line over the last 3 years. Yes, they tried to find a franchise quarterback. But guess what? They failed at both of those things. Yeah, they've built a really good defense. They've built a competitive team. But they failed at the things that put you over the top. The goal of this game is not to necessarily just be competitive year in and year out. No one wants to be a team that makes it to the divisional round every year and calls it quits. You want to win the Super Bowl. That's what you play this game for, to win the Super Bowl. And until that offensive line gets fixed, because they screwed up the quarterback situation, that looks unlikely. Their singular goal, especially once you got to the NFC Championship game in 2017 and then got to go handpick a quarterback, your goal was always going to be Super Bowl or bust. Right now, it's looking like bust, and that costs you a job. That's how it is in the NFL.
All 32 teams are trying to put together a team to win the Super Bowl.
At
Eventually,
some point or another,
at some
yes.
point. They're all trying to do it.
And when you get as close as they did, and Phil's got some great points. And personally, I don't think Mike should be fired. But if you fire Rick, I don't think that you can bring in a new GM and say, stick with Mike. I don't think that's fair. And the reason why Rick might be fired is and Teddy is unfortunate, but his leg snapped. Can't go back in time and fix that leg. Rick is going to get, if Rick gets fired, it's a lifetime achievement award for never finding a quarterback. And keep in mind, that starts when he got the GM job and after Brad got fired and Leslie got his guy, his veteran quarterback, Donovan McNabb, and Rick took Christian Ponder. And ever since then, look at the quarterbacks.
Mhm.
And I'm sorry, at some point in time, that stuff costs you. That stuff costs you. And yes, he tripped on Keenum, but guess what? They didn't keep him, which I'm fine with.
Mhm.
But now you're paying Cousins a guaranteed contract, unheard of in this league, with a no trade, and it looks like he might be far more bust than hit. Eventually, these things come back and bite you right in the butt.
Yep.
And that's how this works. You go 13-3 and have a defense as good as this team did. People don't pat you on the back. And this is why I try to tell people teams don't celebrate. Like, I think people think that teams are like fans. Oh, that 13-3 season was great. Remember that? They sweat it. They
Yeah.
say, how can we get to that next step? Because we were so close. And then we went into Philadelphia and, by the way, got absolutely waxed.
And Mike Zimmer's like, what the hell happened to my defense?
So teams don't sit around and relive 2017 and say, you remember Case this year? Man, let's call a Case on speakerphone and talk.
No.
That's not how teams work.
No.
And is it fair if Mike gets fired? It might not be. But in a league that has moved towards offense now more than ever, it's moving towards young coaches.
Mm-hmm.
It's moving towards GMs who can, some of them can, some of them can't. But if you can find, if the Wills find a guy who they think can find a quarterback, guess what? That person gets the next chance.
Yeah. And that's the way it has to be.
But Phil's questions and Phil's points are right. And the other thing, though, Phil, is think about this. And this to me is if you want nails in the case on Spielman to solidify the case, think about this one, Phil. He signed Kirk Cousins. Now, he missed some stuff for sure. Like we saw stuff last year when you saw him consistently where you said, how thorough was the audit of the Washington Cousins?
Yeah.
And it clearly wasn't as thorough as it should have been. And Phil, here's the main point. He then did not go out and get as good of offensive line as possible. Roger Saffold was out there. You had to go get that type of guard. And you had to tell Mike, I'm really sorry, but Anthony Barr can't come back. I don't care if he signs with the Jets or if he signs with the XFL or if he goes to the CFL. He just can't come back here because I've got to sign a guard or a center. And instead, Rick's biggest problem is, and this will cost him eventually, Rick gets too cute.
Yep.
You know, Klein, what are you doing there? That's a guy that you bring in to compete probably for a job or a backup job, but you sign him to a 2-year contract that's fairly ironclad, I think.
Yeah.
That gives him that job. That's ridiculous.
You trade a 5th-round pick for a punter that you trade to,
you get
that you cut 2 weeks later. And I know it's just a 5th-round pick, and in the grand scheme, you think, okay, well, what's the big deal? It's a 5th-round pick. You never know what that 5th-round pick could turn into.
Well, and that's what Rick always says, though. But so Rick, the problem is he tells us out of one side of his mouth that you don't know that, and then he trades it out of the other side. And so my question, if I'm the Wilfs, is, well, where's the consistency then? What's the truth here?
Yeah.
Which is why if I'm the Wilfs, I call Rick right now and I say, you call Jacksonville and you work this trade out. Jalen Ramsey to the Vikings. And I want it done Friday.